Hey everyone, I hope you're all doing well, especially given what's going on in our country right now and all the craziness that's occurring around us. So usually I try to give my perspective as a Christian and I try to come at things from more of a biblical worldview. In today's video I want to try something a little bit different, and instead of coming at things as a Christian and from a biblical worldview, I wanted to come at things from my perspective as a veteran. So for those of you guys who don't know, I am a combat veteran. I did 2 tours to Afghanistan, one in 2010. I went with my unit, 3rd Battalion, 6th Marine Regiment, to do a push into a city called Marja. And then in 2011 to 2012, I did additional deployment out there to hold that same city. And so hopefully by giving my perspective, it may give you guys a little bit of a fresh take on what's going on in our society right now. And again, I don't claim to be an expert or anything like that. But again, hopefully this will be a little bit of a fresh take for you, and it will help you understand why society is the way that it is, and maybe some practical things we could do to become a little bit more unified. So for a lot of people, what's going on in our country right now is kind of shocking. They see people calling for the full defunding of the police, and they're like, this is a little bit crazy. They see people trying to take away rights and abilities of the police to be able to do their job. And again, they're like, man, that's nuts. Like, why are people acting this way? And I did one video about the hatred of society and why it's moving us this way. But in this video, I wanted to take a look at the attitude of our society, and specifically the disintegrated and entitled mentality of our society, and why it is so easy for people to have that mentality of we would be better off without the police, or we need to take away the rights of the police, and then we'd be better off as a society. So for me, when I came back from deployment and seeing how trauma affected all my friends very differently, it caused me to want to understand trauma and to understand what society's role was in healing the minds of veterans, and why it was that certain people dealt pretty well with trauma and why certain people completely collapsed. And most of my research, if not all of it, kind of led back to the idea that society and community as a whole is the most responsible party when it comes to how we deal with trauma, which is why the more unified a society is, the less that PTSD has a hold. In fact, societies like, for instance, Israel has a less than 1% PTSD rate within their military, even though they have a lot more combat in their units and in their branches than we do. We have over 20% in our military, which should be shocking to a lot of you. Now, one of the main reasons why Israel is doing so well and we're doing so poorly, it has to do a lot with the draft. So in my research, I studied, for instance, World War II. And when you have World War II, yes, World War II veterans went through hell and they came back. And a lot of them took the war back with them, and they were never able to fully get over it. But what you see is the percentages of veterans coming back, the percentages of veterans who were able to recover was far higher than it is today. And the reason why is actually kind of simple. When you have something like the draft, it creates an ideal in the society as a whole, that when you're born understanding that I live to support the society, that one day I'm going to have to serve and possibly give my life for my country. And they saw it as a good thing. They saw it as like, man, this is positive. You're an American. You don't have to agree with everything that America does. And even some people who served in World War II didn't fully agree with being a combatant in that war. However, you did agree with the fact that you were in this together, that we're all in this together. We're all Americans and we're all fighting this thing, and we're all striving to make a better society, both for ourselves and for our world as a whole. Right? That was the mentality going in. Beyond that, when you see people in the World War II generation, when the country went to war, everyone went to war. Everybody was involved in the war effort to one extent or another. Either you were fighting, you knew someone or were closely related to someone who was fighting, or, and as well, you were actively providing for the Allied forces, either working in the industry sector, or you were giving to the war bonds or things like that. Everybody was at war. Fast forward to Vietnam, what happened? We took away the draft, right? We took away the draft, and all of a sudden, instead of us as a country being at war, it was the military and the government are at war, and we aren't. And a disintegration started to happen inside of society. All of a sudden, we were able to look at the military not as being a part of us, but being a totally separate entity that we can judge. And instead of trying to see things from the veterans' perspective, which we did during World War II, we didn't care, right? PBS started shooting their documentaries about what was happening over there, and it turned the entire public against the military. So instead of people looking at the military and saying, oh, they're a part of us, they're a reflection of us, they're like, nope, you are on your own. You are baby killers, you are murderers, you are rapists, we have nothing to do with you. And then people started to curse and to hate the military coming back. Never really thinking that, again, the military exists to serve the public goal. They exist to protect us. People honestly started thinking we'd be better off without a military. They called for the complete disintegration of the military. And this all happened from this entitlement mentality. Because here's the deal. When you're in a society and you are raised to never feel like you have to sacrifice for that society, what you end up doing is you end up looking at the sacrifices of others as being something you're entitled to. So you don't feel thankful or grateful for it. You instead just feel like they should be giving you more and more, kind of like a child. Right? A little child doesn't understand all the sacrifices that a parent has to go through in order to raise them and to take care of them. Because of that, the child isn't really thankful. They really only start becoming thankful. Some children never become thankful, but really they only start becoming thankful once they grow up and they start sacrificing themselves. And then they're like, oh my gosh, like I can't believe my parents did all this for me. This is kind of intense. This is crazy. Like I should be more thankful. That's when the gratitude comes. In the same way, if people are raised and they never learn how to sacrifice for their society, they will never appreciate what their society sacrifices for them. This is why, again, the attitude of society towards police officers isn't shocking to me, because we're so disintegrated from the positions in America, especially the positions that sacrifice the most for our common benefit. And the police force, I feel like, is close to the top of that list of peoples and an organization that, again, gives the most for our society to function. People aren't appreciative of it. We just look at them as almost like employees. We say things like, well, my tax dollars pay your salary, so therefore it's your job. You need to do a better job, right? And we don't really think about their plight. We don't really think about their perspective. We don't really think about why they're doing what they're doing. We don't try to take things from their perspective. We only insert our perspective on them. In kind of a weird way, it mirrors what people do when it comes to athletes, right? So when you have people watching the Super Bowl, even though the people watching it, someone watching it may be a little bit out of shape, they may never even played football in any capacity, but yet they're judging the athletes as if they could do a better job. They're like, man, you should have caught that. You should have made that tackle. I could do a better job. Obviously you couldn't, because if you could, you would be in pro football, right? The reason why you're not in pro football and that guy is because that guy has sacrificed most of his life in order to get into the physical condition need be that he can play professional football. And you don't appreciate that. You just see what he's doing and you think that you could do a better job. And the same rate, that's how people are looking at the police force right now. They see the footage coming back and all they could do is they could say, I could do a better job, right? I could have made a better call than that person. I could have done it in a different way, right? And these are people saying it, and no offense, but you're saying this from a perspective of someone who's never had to be in that situation. You've never put your life on the line. You've never been in a situation of life and death where the decision that you're making could cost you your life or the life of the people around you. You've never been in that situation, and you're judging someone who puts themselves in that situation every day. So someone who has been in that situation, looking at the things happening, specifically with Rayshard Brooks and the shooting in Atlanta, when I look at that situation, I give the cop a lot of mercy. Now, honestly, I think that he didn't really do anything wrong. But again, this is coming from my perspective, someone who understands what it's like to have to make those tough calls. I don't see any malice in that guy when he shot Rayshard Brooks, and I encourage you to watch the full video, right? He sees a muzzle flash, he has no idea what kind of weapon that guy has, and he has to make a tough call. A call that you and most people in society will never have to make. You'll never have to decide between the life of one person and the life of many. And that's something that we have to give a little credence. It doesn't mean that every cop is a hero. It doesn't mean that every cop makes the right decision. But it means that when a cop makes a tough call like that, we should at least try to understand it from their perspective, as opposed to looking at them and like so many people are doing right now, nitpicking him and saying like, oh gosh, like I can't believe he did that. He should have known that the taser wouldn't have hurt him that much. He didn't know that that's what that guy had. He believed, if you look at his testimony, he believed that that person may have had a gun. He didn't know. And so he made a call, right? And he saw this guy shoot, and he saw his partner fall into a car. He had no idea what his partner was shot with. And again, he had to make a call. Beyond that, again, I feel like I have a little bit of a different perspective here than most people. What I saw when I was in Afghanistan really helps me understand the way that police are looking at things right now. So if you want to understand why police aren't showing up for work right now, let me explain it to you. So when I was in Afghanistan, the people that we were supposed to protect, right? We didn't come in there as conquerors. We could have, right? It would have been very easy. We have far better technology than them. We have a far better military than them. We don't have to come there and occupy. We don't have to help these people grow their crops. We don't have to help them have their own government. We could have toppled their government. We could have destroyed all their military. It would have been very, very easy. When we pushed into Marja, which was one of the most heavily fortified cities in Afghanistan, we were able to kill virtually every single Taliban in there in less than 3 days. That's how efficient we are compared to them. Okay? And again, it's not because we're necessarily better fighters, it's because our technology is so much superior to theirs. It was very easy for us to do that. Now, that being said, once we were holding the territory, something started to happen. We started getting hit with IEDs, we started getting hit with more insurgent type warfare. We were getting ambushed, we were getting hit with explosives, and something started growing in us, a resentment started growing in us towards the civilian population. No matter how much we fought it, no matter how much we tried not to have this grow, here's why. Whenever we were hit with an ambush, whenever we were hit with an IED, we knew that that neighborhood, that ambush happened or that IED was planted, we knew that that neighborhood knew where that IED was, they knew when the ambush was going to happen, and they let it happen to us. Why? Because from their perspective, we're not a part of their country. We're some invading force. And even though our rule is much better than the oppressive rule of the Taliban, it's better the devil you know than the devil you don't. They look at the Taliban, they're like, you guys are going to leave, and we're going to be stuck with these people. What do you expect us to do? Side with you? And then all of a sudden you guys leave and the Taliban's left? What do you think they're going to do to us if we don't help them? Right? So I understood why the people were siding with the Taliban, but it doesn't change the fact that I started becoming angry at them. I was like, why am I here? Why am I defending a people group that doesn't care about my sacrifice, doesn't care why I'm here, doesn't care about my family, doesn't care about my country, doesn't care about anything that I'm doing? Why am I risking my life for people who do not care? A lot of cops are gaining that kind of mentality. They're like, man, if society doesn't care about my sacrifice, if people don't care about what I'm doing, why would I risk my life for that? And I applaud the police officers who are remaining at their post and they're continuing to serve regardless of what society is doing. That's something that I didn't have a choice to do. I don't know what I would have done if I had a choice in that situation, but I didn't have a choice to do it. So what we ended up doing is we just started looking out for our own. We just said, like, man, they don't care, but I care about my buddy. And he cares about me, and we would die for one another. So you know what? I'm going to make it my business just to protect each other. And, you know, the civilian population, we care about them, but just not as much. So we're going to make hard decisions in order to stay alive. And that's what you see, again, a lot of police officers doing. They're like, why would I go to work for a people group that are literally going to leave me high and dry? You know, when you look at a police officer that's facing death penalty charges for doing his job, you can totally understand why cops would make the decision that they're making. So again, I'm not saying that everything the military does is perfect. We did a lot of imperfect and bad things over there. However, it's really hard for you to judge someone when you haven't been there and you don't understand their perspective. So as a society, there's no way we're going to grow and there's no way we're going to heal as long as we see it as an us versus them kind of mentality. We as a civilian population cannot look at the police force and say like, oh my gosh, like you guys are evil, you're the devil. No, they're not. They're trying to do their job, right? They're not all heroes. Some of them really are not very good cops. They're not very good police officers. Derek Chauvin was not a very good police officer, and police officers agree that he wasn't a good police officer. However, what happened to Rayshard Brooks, as tragic as it was, there's a reason why so many police officers are siding with the cop that killed him. And most of them, by the way, over half of Atlanta PD that's refusing to show up to work, over half of them are black, right? So it's not a race issue. This is an issue of how police do their jobs and an issue of how they govern themselves. So we need to be able to at least be willing to see things from their perspective before we cast judgment upon them. And for you cops out there doing an awesome job, I can't begin to thank you enough. Thank you so much for putting your life at risk, especially for a community and society that doesn't seem very appreciative of you. I encourage you to keep doing your job, and man, hopefully things will turn around soon. Things turned around for the military, and I'm thankful that they did. I don't know if I would have been able to make it back from my deployment if I was met with the same kind of hostility that the Vietnam vets were met with. So I'm very thankful that society changed their tune, and I am, again, hoping and praying that they will change their tune when it comes to the police force. But again, I hope this perspective may have helped you guys a little bit. If you have any comments or questions, please leave them below. I'd be happy to hear from you and to hear your perspective as well. Anyway, I'll talk to you guys later.